Hello, everyone. Welcome back. All right, so this is a continuation of last week's video, or yesterday's video. I think I'm going to do these daily. So yesterday's video, I had, where did we leave off? We left off with this grid. If you haven't watched it, do go and watch it. It shows us how we got to this point, and all my failures and some debugging tips. Try to watch these in order. I highly recommend it because you get to see how everything was made from start to finish, and the processes that we went through. It also explains what this is all about and really how this is all going to get built. All right, so continuing where we left off, we've now got ourselves this grid, right? And the interesting thing is that we're not actually we're loading it in from the JavaScript. So we don't actually we've got a little bit of JavaScript code here, which goes over our the creation of the grid, and that's really about it. So you don't always have to like stub things out in HTML. You can sometimes, if there's just a lot of stuff going on, go ahead and make it in JavaScript. That way it's a little easier for you. So you don't have to sit there and I could have done row and row and row and row and copy and pasted that so many times. But what if we want to change the size of it? We would have had to go in there and change things around and stuff like that. Whereas this, it kind of it eliminates that. Now we can just change our looping variables. And actually, let's go ahead and do that. Let's show a little bit of code refactoring. So I've got these variables at the top, and I'll try to like put them in a decent order to see them. But one of the things we can do, right, is we can say how many rows there are. We will say there's 20 rows, and then there are let's do 10 columns 10. So there's 20 rows and 10 columns, right? So what we can do is pull those out into variables here, and then it makes it a little easier for us to change this if we need to, because we might use these later in our code. So it's always good to make little variables for things that will happen later on in our code. So let's see. Always also very good to actually use the var keyword. Kind of important. It's more or less implicit, so it knows that that's what you're doing. I'm just looking for ways to kind of improve this a little bit, and this is looking pretty good actually. So all right, so next thing we need to do is I guess we need to make our shapes, right? So we need to figure out how are we going to make our shapes, and we need to go back to that really helpful Wikipedia page that showed us all the different sizes, right? So we can have 4 across. We can have let's see. All of these use 4 blocks. Okay, so all of them use 4 blocks, but they're all in different arrangements. So we need to figure out how are we going to store that information, because we're going to have to be generating this stuff later. Okay, so what is the best way to store these bits of data? So obviously we're going to need some sort of data structure, right? So since the game is going to load later, we will go ahead and we're going to let's just go ahead and stub this stuff out. So var we'll call it blocks equal an array, and let's do it this way for the moment. So we'll say blocks. Let's see. Blocks dot push, and we're going to create an object that is the block, and it needs to have. How should we store this? It needs to tell us position, as well as, so kind of like the shape. So we could use XY coordinates. That's one way. Could try to do some sort of relative type thing. This is an interesting problem. Oh, and as I said, sorry this is boring, as I'm sitting here thinking, is I'm not going to work on this unless you guys are watching, so that you can see exactly how long things take, and that we don't always have the answers. I don't know how to store this yet, so I'm thinking about it. What's a interesting but useful way to store things for this grid, right? So probably an XY positioning system. The other thing that you notice is there's two rows. There's only ever two rows, right? So there's a row number 1 and row number 2. And then we could make like a little mini grid that has columns. And I guess we could also do that with the X and Y's, right? So if we call this row 0 and this column 0, we could build the shape of these things. I guess let's just throw that in there and see where it takes us. So we're gonna put in a I guess we're gonna do an XY coordinate system where let's see, how do we represent this data? We can make an array of arrays. That's kind of confusing. Blocks. Just trying to think the best way. We can make an array of objects. Although that's, if they always come in order, X and Y, then we could go ahead and assume that. So we can make an array of arrays. I guess let's start with that, right? So the first block occurs if we take this block, for example, and we put it on a grid that only takes up the space that it needs, right? So we're only using the 0 row. So the X here would be 0, and the Y would be 0. Then the X would be 1, and the Y would be 1. X would be 2, Y would be 1, or 0, and yeah, so let's try that. So 0, 0. Then we have another array of 1, 0. And then we have another array of 2, 0. And another array of 3, 0. Alright, so that's our block 1, right? So we're going to go ahead and block 1. Block push, and we're going to put another one in here. So let's look at this next one, right? We've got 0, yeah, we've got 0, 0, then we have, do we increase the Y as we go down? Should we start, is this 0, 0, and this is 0, or yeah, 0, 1. Yeah, let's do that. So we're going to have, what, a 0, 0, and then we have a 0, 1, then we have a 0, or a 1, 0, which is the next block, which is this block. Oops, clicking on that does something else. And then let's do a 2, 0. So we're going to call that block 2. Okay. Block push. Alright, next one. So we've got what, 0, 0. and then 0, 1, 0, 2, and then because we go up, we need to go, oh, I did that completely wrong. That's a vertical line, isn't it? Oh, 1, 0, 2, 0, and then we will do 2, 1, which makes that last one go up. We'll call that block 3. And then we need this one, right? So this one is the square, and it's going to be 0, 0, then 0, 1, then 1, 0, and then 1, 1. Okay, we'll call that block 4. Alright, this one's a little different. So 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 2, 1. Alright, you have that memorized? 0, 0. What was it? 0, 1. No, it's not. Sorry, 1, 0. Then we will have 1, 1, and 2, 1. Okay, so that's block 5. Next, 0, 0, 0, 1, no, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 2, 0. Block, push, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, and 2, 0. Okay, so that's block 6. And then we will have 0, 1, 1, 1. No. Yeah, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 2, 0. Block, push, 0, no, 1, 0, 1, right? Yep. 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, and what was the other one? 1 or 2, 0. That's block number 7. Okay, so we have all our blocks, right? So our we will access the blocks in the current design. I might change this around as it starts to make sense. Oh, also it helps if I put an S, oops, on all of these, considering that's what their object is called. So blocks, basically, to get the first block, we would do blocks 0, which would give us the first block in the array. Then if we wanted to get coordinate, the first coordinate, which is this coordinate, right, then we would put another 0. And then if we wanted to get the x value, we would put another 0. If we wanted the y, we would put a 1. So that's kind of confusing, and we'll probably go through a refactory of that. And actually, another way to do this that I didn't explore, but we should probably do. This is good to do though. This is good to experiment with. How do I want to rearrange this data? And usually, what will happen, which is what just happened, is you realize There's another way I want to do this, and especially this is kind of ugly. This is really ugly. It's going to be really easy to get confused later on. So what we want to do is we do want this first array because we want to be able to randomly generate that, and using like math random is going to be a lot easier to get an integer value for the first value. So we definitely want to do an integer, or a number for the first one. But the second ones, we probably do want an integer for the second one, but it would be a lot easier if we had an x and a y. And it'd also be easier if I didn't have to, these are also going to be located at different positions, right? So this is their structure, but this isn't their actual position, because once they start moving on the board, this would be like 0, 0, right? So if this, well, I guess this is 0, 0. It just depends on what way you're doing. So, it's easy enough to display down here, but, if we're going to have them fall in, they're going to be at, what would this be, 0, 20? And then it would go down to 0, 19, and so there's going to be 2 sets of stuff, and that's a lot of stuff to keep inside of these arrays, and so this is definitely not the ideal situation. So what we want is a class. JavaScript does not have a class by nature, but we're starting to deal with an object. If you think of a block as an actual object, it has properties of itself, it's aware of itself, it's a thing. If you could say it's a thing, then these aren't really things. I mean, we could objectify these, but this is a really simple script. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a class called a block. And the way you create a class in JavaScript is, by convention, use the capital letter for the first. It's not required, but it kind of helps other developers know that that's what you're doing. And you actually create a function, and this is a really strange concept for most. But that's how this stuff works, right? So we're going to, there's a bunch of different things, and we're probably going to change this model as we go a little bit. So what we want to do is we want each block to have, we want it to have a set of coordinates, right? So, you know what? Even better is, you could say that a block has a shape, right? So if we define these as shapes, then that would be a lot easier to work with. So we're going to define a new class as well called shape. Okay, so how does all this stuff work, right? So we are going to, do I want one more? Let's just start building this stuff out for the moment, right? So we're going to have a shape is going to have different coordinates. So when you're dealing with a class, you use the keyword this, and this is a terrible word to have. It can act very, very differently depending on where you're using it from. A lot of bugs are caused by this in JavaScript. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the age-old trick of, usually it's called the this equals that, and we're going to set this equal to self, so that when we start actually using the objects, self will have its correct reference, but the word this may be something else, like window, which is not what we want. So it's always good when you're dealing with objects to do this kind of notation. So we're going to do self dot coordinates, right, equals an array. I'd like to find a way to abstract out the coordinates so that we can have predefined coordinates. All right, well, one of the things we can do up here is we can say, we're going to do the same trick, right? Self equals this. And then we're going to do self dot shape equals whatever shape that goes in when we create this, right? So we're going to take in an argument and we'll call it shape. And shape will be of a new shape. And we're going to pass the shape, I guess, number into the block. This is probably kind of confusing. I swear once I get this done and reworked, you'll see how it all works. Which sadly might have to be the next episode. That's terrible, actually. Oh, how do I do this quickly for you guys? So each shape has a coordinate. This also takes a shape argument now. Alright, so I'm just going to do it this way. So we're going to say var shapes equals an array. Basically, it's kind of this thing, the array of blocks, right? And actually, well, let's call them shapes, right? So these are more of our shape definitions at this point. I'm not going to change the comment at the moment, but I'll get that for sure. So, so now what we can do is coordinates equals the, let's do shapes, and then our shape number, right? So this is kind of confusing, I'm sure. And what this is going to give us is once we get a little bit further along and we start actually dealing with the objects, we're gonna need a little more functionality, like where is itself and is it rotated and things like that. So objects are great for that kind of thing. So first thing also that we're going to do in this refactor is we're going to change these from arrays to objects. And we're going to give an X and a Y to these objects, right? And one trick that you can do in WebStorm is you can draw a multi-line cursor, and I think you can also do that in Sublime as well if you know the right key combination. And so what that kind of gives us the ability to do is we can edit a lot of this stuff pretty quickly as well. So if we kind of go through this and put that there, and then again, I'm sorry for like making you guys wait and watch all this stuff, but I'm trying to stick with my promises of showing you guys exactly how this stuff works. Okay, so X, nope, we want that, then an X, and then we're going to do a Y, colon, the brace, or the, yeah, and X, nope, not what I wanted. Okay, Y, space out of just annoyance, really. Well, let's just forget it. Wrong button. Okay, so this is a little more manageable, and this may be obvious to some of you, and this may not be obvious to some others. And what this is basically doing for us is it's giving us, these are like predefined shapes, right? Yeah, that's kind of confusing with the space in there. I might take that out. These are predefined shapes. So this is this is like shape 1, shape 2, shape 3, shape 4. And we want to basically, as when you create a new block, we want to give it a new shape, but in that shape, we want to also give it a new um, a new set of coordinates, which would be picked from these. So this shape goes all the way through the block object into the shape object that it creates. Now let's take a look at this, right? So in order to kind of check this out, this is great for the console to do. So I just reloaded the page, so all that code's in there now. So if you write block and you press this, you'll see this is our function here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a, we're going to call this var b equals a new block, make a method call with it, and we're going to give it an integer of 0. And when we do that, it comes back undefined, but it's not actually undefined. If we type b, you'll see that it's a block, and it has a shape, which is of type shape. And then inside shape, there are coordinates, where there's 4 coordinates, and then each coordinate has an x and a y. What does this give us? This gives us the ability to say something like b dot shape dot coordinates dot x, and it gives us back undefined, of course, obviously, because a coordinates is an array, not. So now that gives us 0. So if we wanted to look at what the y value is, now obviously this is also 0, but maybe we wanted the x of the second one, and that's 1, obviously. So this kind of gives us a lot of power. We can start this starts becoming a little more English-like. So we just get block dot shape dot coordinates, and then you pick the right coordinate for it, which we can put inside of a for loop, and then we'll just do the x and y comparisons to kind of place it on the thing. Playing around in your console is a great way to kind of explore this stuff. Figure this all out. I've done this lots of times before, so not this example, but so it's great to play with this stuff, and we took something that was so confusing at the beginning. How are we going to display these things in a way that is going to be meaningful to both the computer and to us, so that we can make this game into this these definitions with the these objects that now hold their own properties. These are called properties on an object, and you're going to see how this stuff kind of plays out. It's going to be really, really helpful. So yeah, so next time we will get a little more in depth into the blocks and the shapes, and trying to flesh this stuff out, and maybe even displaying some to the screen, which would be great. So it's been a lot of fun, and I will see you guys next time.